Hi, everybody. Very excited to be with Dom Jones, one of the co-founders and the head of people of Maray today. Dom, how are things?
Very good, Rob. How are you?
I'm very well. Better for seeing you, mate. So listen, let's dive straight in. Now, you are unusual, I think, at least of my sort of friends and customers across the hospitality community, in that you've grabbed the title head of people whilst being one of the co-founders of the business. I know loads of us that start businesses occupy many seats when we're getting things up off the ground, but it's fairly unusual, I think, to actually claim the head of people title formally from a founder perspective. Why did you invest your career in this specific discipline versus maybe some of the other things that you might have specialized in, like, you know, finance like James, or brand like Tom?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think what's really important when you've got partners and there's three of you, it's important to understand where your strengths lie, and it's really important to be quite different, bringing different things to the table. And I've always been just really passionate about the teams, really, and developing people and engaging them. We've spoke about for years employee engagement and how important it is. And we've been going 7.5 years now, and we've been able to pinpoint periods when staff are very engaged, when they're not, and you've got to keep a really close eye on it. And it needs full-time dedication, and it's an area I'm definitely passionate about. I really enjoy teaching the teams, arranging training sessions, and so they really value that. And if you invest your time in showing people things, opening their eyes to the things that we see at our level, people really value that. And, you know, I want to be a company that really develops their people. I want to create a culture where we hire from within on all our senior positions. But to do that, we've got to invest in our people, and that's where my strengths seem to fall. And I think over the last few years, I think most founders will recognize it when I say that when you start a business, you wear multiple hats. You're doing the finance, the HR, you might be doing 3 to 4 different functions, and because you can't afford to have someone in every position looking after those things. It's only recently between myself and my 2 partners, James and Tom, we've become more specialized, which has been good. It's really freed us up to focus on those areas where we're best. And yeah, for me, where I fell was on the people side of the business. And, you know, we just striving to get better and better each day and be the best employee we can be, because we've all seen the recruitment challenges recently, and we've got to change the way we do things and make sure we attract the best talent and keep them. And that's what we really aim to do at Maray.
Well, I mean, I've obviously seen in numbers, like, full disclosure, we work together, and, you know, we're all about sort of what we call social leadership data. And I know that you rank pretty near the top of the industry pretty consistently for sort of engagement stats and influence and all that sort of thing. So I'm sure we'll come on to some of your tips as to how you've achieved that a little later. But I think what would be useful to start with is tell us a little bit about the Maray business. Like, how do you describe the sort of the customer proposition and the sort of the strategy, the brand strategy you're going for, so that people understand what type of business it is that you're building?
Yeah, of course. So when we started many moons ago, we just wanted to create somewhere cool that we'd like to go ourselves. And it quickly started to evolve into somewhere that lots of other people also like to go. So we do Middle Eastern inspired small plates, really good cocktails. We've always focused on our drink offering, because that's the background myself and Tom came from. Whereas James had more of a food background. So we're always really passionate about the wet side of the business as well. It's come to create just a really fun and accessible and creative atmosphere, really, that our guests seem to love.
Did you imagine that you were going to be multi-site when you started, or was it not really? No. It wasn't a grand plan to scale?
No, it wasn't. There wasn't a grand plan. Took about a year to start thinking like that, and we thought, you know what, we've got something that people really care about. And one of the big things that, you know, that care was coming from, you know, our guests, but also the team as well. We had members of the staff who were getting really invested, and it felt like we were creating something that could be scaled, and we're still working on that journey. But yeah, to answer the question, no, we weren't thinking about that to start with. So yeah, what you focus on early on is very, very different to what you look at now. And
why do you think it worked from the beginning? Like, if you've been on a journey to sort of become an excellent people organization, I'm inferring from that you weren't necessarily an excellent people organization to begin with, and yet you were successful because that's what bought you the time and the right to carry on. What were the costs in the early days of not doing some of the things that you do now? And we'll get into what those things are a bit later, but like, in what ways were you a worse business in those first years, and why?
I suppose the big thing is you don't know what you don't know. And there's, you just learn so much from mistakes and failure, and you just don't want to make them again. And I mean, I can't really pinpoint any specific things, but it's just, you've got to grow your management experience, leading big teams and being responsible for so many things. It's many things that, we made hundreds of mistakes.
Can I call some out then? Because I've made thousands of cock-ups just running my business, and I don't think it's as operationally complicated as what you folks do on your side of the sort of supplier operator divide. We're all part of the same big happy family, of course.
Yeah.
Recruitment, getting the right type of people on the bus. Like, did you know what makes a Maray person at the beginning, or did you not really know?
We didn't really know, to be honest. We were lucky with our opening team. It was small, and we were 30% of it, but they were very, very invested, and I think we created something that people wanted to be part of. So it was a really good group, that first group, and they're still very much ambassadors of the brand. And no, we didn't know what a stereotypical Maray employee would look like, and because I think you've got to allow your business to grow and form its values. You can't start with values because you haven't created any. You've got to allow that. You can't force that kind of thing. That takes 2 to 3 years really before that values process starts. But I suppose on a personal level, you'd hire people who you got a connection with. You'd feel like they're a good culture fit. And we found plenty of them in the early days. And we're still trying to do that on a bigger scale.
One of my favorite exercises is to work out what your anti-values are, and not like just like someone that's evil or dishonest, because that type of person wouldn't fit in really anywhere, investment banking maybe. But my favorite type of anti-values are people that would be successful somewhere else but wouldn't be successful in your place. Do you have any sort of, I don't want any names, but I'm sure you'll be picturing people from history. Like, do you have any examples of Maray anti-values? So characteristics that maybe wouldn't hold you back in the wider industry, but mean that you're probably not quite the right fit for Maray?
Yeah, I mean, just going through the memory bank, I do remember certain individuals who came with fantastic CVs, but just didn't quite work for us. Trying to put my finger on it, I can't exactly articulate how, but you are right. It doesn't make them bad at their job or not the right fit for somewhere else. And it's about being the kind of employee that recognizes that and provides that feedback and in a timely manner. And just sometimes we don't want to be like a great place for everybody. We want to be like a very good place for the right people to work. And it's so true that you can't be everything to everybody. It's really important that you try and narrow down what those values are and try and find a values match with the people.
There's loads of amazing people in the hospitality people leadership sort of discipline people leaders, whether they're sort of conventional sort of transactional HR side or more the sort of charismatic cultural visionaries. It's not clear to me that all of them are truly empowered to actually make the impact on their businesses that their talent deserves, that they could. One of the reasons I'm so interested in your position is because you carry co-founder authority along with being the head of people. I'm just interested to hear you sort of riff a little bit on, are there any areas where being a co-founder and carrying the baggage of being responsible for having built the organization, any areas where it actually makes the job harder, and any areas where you think you do need co-founder authority to impact culture?
Does it make the job harder? I think it helps in terms of you've got a much better view of the company, and you've seen on a people front, you've seen so many people come and go, and say of 20 people who have left our company, I've got such a knowledge of why that didn't work out. Yeah, I think that exposure I've had to every single element of the business does help in that sense. And like I said earlier, like I can pinpoint periods, particularly difficult periods about we've had in the past where engagement's been low and team morale's been low, and things we've done to combat that and improve that. And we've done various different things to try and improve those situations, and they're all just learning experiences. And it's I think that connection to the wider company, and it's knowing every nook and cranny of each restaurant and what it's taken to get here, it does give me an advantage over the examples you provided earlier, Rob.
Well, one of the things that I've seen is the level of candor that you and your co-founders have brought to Maray, particularly over the last 18 months, I would say, like the coronavirus period has really been best in class. I know it's not culturally for everyone. I mean, you disclose a lot of your numbers across the whole organization, talk about what's easy, what's hard, which is difficult in benign times. It's near impossible in the sort of the like a sector depression like COVID has been, and yet you've been unflinching with the other two through this period. And it seems really clear to me that that's one of the things that's been the making of the culture and has driven that level of engagement. But I'm almost reluctant to tell the community about that because I don't know how replicable it is. What do you think? I mean, would you recommend that medicine to other organizations?
It's worked for us. And I mean, to give a bit of context to our YAPs journey, we started with you guys in, I think we got it over the line March the 1st, 2020, and we all know what happened after then. But as part of our strategy, we spoke and said, you know what, we need to over-communicate with our staff during this period. So YAPs came in at a really good time for us. And that's what we did during the first lockdown. We over-communicated. We had group calls, and we were just finding our feet with the tool. We tried a few things. People were sharing their lockdown dinners, and some things were more popular than others. But we were trying stuff out, and it did really engage the team. And I think from that period and the appreciation of the staff of that oversharing, because we heard stories of other operators who just weren't communicating with the staff, and that didn't feel right to us. We wanted to look back at the period of lockdown and be proud of the decisions we made, and that all the decisions were made for our people. And granted, we didn't get everything right, and we were never going to, because things were changing so quickly. But that culture of oversharing really stemmed from then, and we've moved that into a non-lockdown life where we do share our numbers. You see the reaction we get to doing that, and it just gives the team a bit more purpose to why they come to work every day. And they can tell whether they've had a good day or not, based on the number of people we've had through the door and the sales we've done. There's no worse feeling, I think, than just say, based on a month, you don't know if you've had a good month or not. You need to know how you're performing and what those metrics are. And our team are really engaged in those figures, and it's worked for us. And we've not got it right all the time. We've got to make it relatable to their job. There's no point us popping in to see the servers and telling them about EBITDA, because they don't care. They want to know how many covers they've served and what their NPS score was. That's the thing that they can relate to. So it's taken time to find out the hierarchy of information and who needs to hear what, but it's definitely been a plus for us, the sharing element of information.
What I thought was so cool about your approach is even the way you just phrased there that the team aren't that interested in EBITDA. But what I thought was cool is you started from a position of over disclosure, and then you're just removing information, not because you're being secretive about it, but just because you want the engagement with the information to go up, and therefore it's being selective for that reason. Did you have much criticism through the period? I mean, I think we all did to some extent, because we're trying to lead in unbelievably choppy, uncertain waters. And were you at any point, even though you didn't succumb to it, were you tempted to be less open, transparent, inclusive during those choppy times where you did have the one or two folks that maybe didn't understand the pressure that you were under or where you were coming from? Or did you just hold firm the whole way and never have a moment of self-doubt?
I wish I could say that, but I think we got it right most of the time. I'm struggling to recall of any examples where any of our information sharing was wrong or landed really badly. I think there's a lot of trial and error involved in getting YAPs off the ground, and like I said earlier, just trying to find out what information people wanted, but no, nothing too damaging. Everyone responded well to our approach.
Yeah, I mean, I was even thinking more about like not necessarily the Yapster stuff, and it may be that you fortunately didn't run into this, but I know that there are a lot of people across the industry that chose to be communicative to their workforce when the government were not being clear about the help that we were going to get as an industry, and there were leaders that were taking flack for government indecision. And I really admired that. I thought it was really interesting but challenging, because everybody was under stress. And of course, frontline colleagues in some of those organizations didn't realize how lucky they were to have leaders that were willing to stand up and be transparent and try and give certainty to their teams when they were not being given the same benefit of certainty by the government. I thought it was really interesting. And so it was something I just sort of read between the lines of your culture, just knowing when we're talking to you guys about some of those disclosures. But that's awesome if the culture was strong enough going in that you didn't have too much griping even under that type of pressure. Something I guess you should be very proud of.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, that's one thing I'm really proud of. And I think James and Tom would agree with me. We set out to look back on that period and know that we've done the right thing in most occasions. And I think the team, I think they could see we were trying. I think that was a big win for us. And we were really trying to do as much as we could. And I think that was felt. I think that was felt by the team. And, you know, most who started off with us at that period were still with us when we were allowed to reopen, which was great. And, you know, many of them are still with us today, which is really exciting.
That's awesome. How consensual is your sort of co-founder management style as a leadership team? Like, to what extent do you sort of democratically agree what the culture of Maray is going to be, or how the people organization is going to work, or to what extent does that get sort of delegated to you to execute, to come up with and execute that sort of plan on behalf of the organization?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, like a lot of companies, we we've done quite a bit of soul searching recently and been working on our purpose and our values. At the recent conference we were at, there was a lot of people talking about becoming purpose-driven companies and working on that during certain lockdowns, and we've been similar. So in the last 6 months, we've been working closely with some external help on really narrowing down what our purpose is and what our values are. And it's an exercise we've been through in the past, but like all these things, they iterate and they evolve. What got you here won't necessarily get you there. And what we've done recently is really engage our senior team in the process as well. So it wasn't just us three thinking of this purpose and then pushing it down. It was done with their support, and that's shaping how we approach things. That's going to shape our long-term strategy and our vision, and how not just the three of us, but our senior team show up every day. And I can see the green shoots of that being pushed down the company when you hear members of the team talking about the purpose and our values, and once they become alive, and it takes time to bring them alive. It really does. It doesn't happen overnight, but once they are alive, that's almost setting out the framework for what happens in your business. And that's, yeah, it's been a big breakthrough for us, that, and it shapes our decisions, our behaviors, and it's got to go along with our values. So that's a big way of how we work at the minute.
Can you give us any sort of sneak peeks as to the vision, sort of purpose type stuff you're landing on? I don't mean like the sort of crisply phrased elevator pitch, but I just mean just some of the sort of words that are coming up and that are starting to become part of the fabric of the culture and your vision for the business.
Sure. So our purpose, what's important to us is, we really kind of worked for a long time on this, and it was, why do we exist? And we believe that our company is to make people feel like they belong, and that that doesn't just apply to our guests, but it's also all our team and our suppliers and our neighbors. And we forging those relationships, what became clear when we were doing these exercises was people do feel like they belong when they dine with us, and they keep coming back, and our team members are really engaged. So that's where we settled on our purpose, and it's really, like I said, it's becoming really alive in our company, and you can see the way people are engaging with each other. And when a guest comes, it's that we want to give them that sense of belonging, that we are somewhere that they'll come back again and again and share with the friends and say nice things about us.
How does that flow through? How does that flow through in practice, Tom? Like, what are some examples of things that would happen when I come to Maray that would make me feel like I belong? I appreciate there might not be like grand gestures. I'm just curious as to what are the practical activities that lead to a feeling of belonging that then ties into the purpose and mission. Yeah,
sure. So it's really the team within the restaurants. They really are focused on that guest experience and that guest journey of, from the moment somebody makes the booking, if it's over the phone, it's done in a way that, lets them know, like, we're looking forward to them visiting. And, when they do visit, they're made to feel like they belong through, attentive and just excellent service, and that real kind of level of care that goes into every bit of food and drink we serve. And it's a feeling as well. It just, the team do radiate it, and it's like I said, we took time to try and codify and articulate what it was, and it is something that was already alive in the company before we wrote it down. And now it's just we're in the process of just really compounding it amongst the team and making sure that it's lived by everyone.
And so does that mean that part of making people feel like they belong is maybe like a sort of familiar type feel? Because like, where I was going to get to is I wondered like where are the trade-offs in delivering that strategy authentically? So for example, like when you say to me belonging, I hear like familiar, I hear like, you know, you're going to a great restaurant, that's a bit of a cliche, but like Louisiana, you know, you're in there and you're darling this and that around, and they're making you feel really welcome. And you do feel like part of the extended family. But to some extent, that runs slightly contrary to the vibe you might get in some sort of like fine dining type establishments. And I think that's probably okay. That's probably an okay trade-off if the brand promise is a feeling of belonging. Just interested to hear you kind of riff on that. Like would you, for example, want the team to bias towards over familiarity rather than highfalutin, you know, looks great on Instagram, but maybe feels a bit cold in practice? Or is that a false dichotomy?
Yeah, the over familiarity is there's probably negative connotations attached to that. It's almost, but I do know what you're saying. We try and, you know, our team are really good at just engaging with guests, and you know, a lot of our restaurants see a lot of visitors to the city because, you know, Liverpool gets a hell of a lot of tourists, and so often we get a feedback email saying, oh, your team are really good. They give us a list of recommendations, you know, they learn the names of the staff and they get mentioned a lot in emails, but they're made to feel like they're very much welcome in the city and in our restaurants, and you know, it's going above and beyond and making sure that experience, even when they step foot outside the restaurant, is as good as what they've just had in the restaurant as well. And it's a really nice community here, and that's one of our best things that I see our team do a lot, is writing down all the names of the favorite bars and pubs and places to go. And yeah, it's that level of hospitality which, you know, we love to see inside our places.
I think it's going to, depending on how far you want to scale the operation and the brand, I think it's going to be fascinating seeing you like carry some of that character of the city into the surrounding area. And, you know, don't know if you're going to end up coming as far down as me down here in London, but it's a fascinating concept because the team genuinely are a joy to be around, from you, James and Tom, to anybody else that we've certainly dealt with. That feeling of belonging, even as a supplier, comes through. It's super interesting, but I don't quite know how you bottle it. You seem to have done that so far. And so I know it's something that other sort of founders or deeply sort of brand invested, maybe non-founder leaders in the industry would be interested to try and imitate. But it sounds like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like not something that you necessarily can come up with in a lab, right? It's partly about finding your way by doing, and it just being authentic to you. And then when you then eventually arrive at the mission statement, you're just trying to put the right labels on something that already existed rather than coming up with a formula on a blank piece of paper. Yeah,
exactly. That certainly wasn't an exercise in working backwards. It was, yeah, what do we do well? Let's talk about it. Let's really, you know, peel away the layers and, you know, see what's left. You know, what is that core element that lives within not just us three, but our team now. They're the guys, you know, on the floor every day now, and they live it as much as we do. And it's exciting to see that purpose is being pushed down, and it's not being forced down as well. They really invested in it, and it's yeah, I'm just really proud of our team and the kind of the amount of care, like the care that they show it every day, and what they want to, and the food that they put out and the hospitality they provide. It's, you know, it's amazing to see, and it's something that we've got to protect. And you are right, you know, if we could bottle it, then we would, but it's kind of it's hard. You can't. It's how you show up every day, isn't it?
As a founder people leader, do you think you can care too much versus, say, perhaps a conventional employee head of people?
Yes, I do think you can. Yeah, I think you can, and it's certainly something I've worked on recently and over the past couple of years. You've got to let go a little bit of that emotion, because you are so emotionally invested in the company. And if somebody thinks you're a bad place to work, you can take it to heart, and because you want to create somewhere that's great to work. And it's so if something comes up like that in the past, it might have been taken quite emotionally and hurt, and it still hurts, not that it doesn't, but that we've got look a bit longer to a bit at the bigger picture now, and understand that, like we said earlier, we can't be the right place for everyone, and we're also going to make some mistakes as well. We might hire somebody who and rush them in, and they might not get trained enough in certain areas, and that level of engagement then isn't where we need it to be, and then they might leave thinking that wasn't the best experience. And you've just got to learn from those mistakes and make the next experience better for whoever comes in. So yeah, because it's your baby, isn't it? And it's hard not to take it personally, but you've got to, I think, as a working in the people and HR side of things, you've got to, whilst you've got to be extremely empathetic, you've got to at times remove the emotion, which can sound a little bit cold, but you've got to protect your team and the business as well in certain situations.
I certainly find the blessing and the curse of being a founder people leader is the amount you care. Certainly from my perspective, and I think this is true for quite a lot of the people we work with, data really helps because it cuts through some of the anecdote. It's easy to gravitate to the highs and lows. That one person at either sort of end of the roller coaster, telling you you're great or telling you suck. Actually, sometimes having the numbers to step back and look at anchors you somewhere in the middle. Does data form a big part of your decision making in the business generally, and then in the people sphere specifically, or not so much, more feeling?
Definitely, yeah. I think we're a big believer that data trumps opinion, and you can't always rely on your gut as much as you trust your gut. I think at times that is really important, but it's important to have your hands on the data. It's also important not to be drowning in data as well, because sometimes you can and you don't know what to do with it. It's important to find out what's important for your business and what is that data measuring, and can it drive strategy. So as the years have gone on, we're collecting more and more data, and the stories behind the data are becoming clearer and clearer. So from the people side of the business, we've, going back to when engagement was low, we can, that shows up in NPS scores and sales, and it's just fascinating the correlation of that, which is why it's so important to which is why engaged teams are so important to your business. They do affect the bottom line, and I think more and more companies are really appreciating that now than ever before, that a healthy and a engaged team are going to help grow the business much more than a team that's not engaged and they're just there for the paycheck. So yeah, data's definitely got a place in this side of the business.
Are your YAPs numbers so high because you look at the numbers, or is it just because of the effort that's gone into, and a little bit of, I guess, luck of your sort of original concept and co-founder chemistry, that it just works and the numbers then really lag the culture and the operational design? Or is it something you've actively had to work on? Because I know a lot of our customers would like to be able to emulate your engagement and reciprocal communication numbers, where you're not just posting things, but people are actually talking right back to you from the front line. Is that luck or is that effort?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think you tracking it, which I do closely, it does. Yeah, tracking it does kind of like subconsciously help shape how you're gonna work with the tool. And I think we have been a little bit lucky. Like, people have got really behind it, and we've tried loads of things. And like I said earlier, not everything's worked, but the things that do work seem to strike a chord. And I think the biggest win for us was on Yapster was when it just wasn't coming from us three. The team start posting more and engaging each other. But yeah, keeping a close eye on those numbers does somehow help it stay at a certain level. It does.
It certainly focuses the attention, doesn't it? Well, listen, like, we really admire what you've done. I'm sure loads of people are going to have found this conversation very, very helpful, particularly those that are carrying that weight of being a founder and responsible for people and culture. So, Dom, thank you so much for making the time to do this.
Appreciate it, Rob. Thanks very much.